Welcome to Awakened Motherhood, the podcast where mothers share their powerful stories of healing and empowerment. I am your host, Amanda Quick, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and advocate. In each episode, we dive deep into the stories of mothers who have overcome adversity, found their fierce feminine power, and embraced transformative parenting. Whether you're a mother driven to fight for your children or someone with a story burning inside you, this podcast is for you. Together, we'll explore themes of resilience, self-trust, and healing from our traumatic experiences, all spotlighting the profound journeys of awakened mothers. Join us for a space of naked authenticity, deep inspiration, and genuine connection. Embrace the divine feminine and discover your own warrior mama within. Welcome to Awakened Motherhood, where your story is the spark for change. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Awakened Motherhood. I'm your host, Amanda Quick. In today's episode, I have Jenna with us. Jenna is an astrology coach, and she is working with people going through this awakening process. And ever since she had her birth chart read 3 years ago, she has really been stepping into this place of understanding who she is and how utilizing our birth chart actually helps kind of guide us in that process, as well as the connections that we have with those who are important to us, whether that be our relationships or our children, and utilizing our birth charts and how all of that comes together to kind of navigate these relationships and navigate this unfolding of what exactly it is we're all here doing on this planet Earth. So welcome so much, Jenna. I'm excited to dig in.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Yay. Yeah, no, we've been having great conversations behind the scenes. So
we have.
It's so fun to officially get this started.
Recorded.
Yes, exactly. Perfect. So why don't you go ahead and kind of give people a little background? You know, we often start this, the person you were before that was challenged, that was struggling, and what did you believe about yourself, and what did your life look like, when this journey began?
Oh, wow. Okay, well, first things first, I would absolutely not have the confidence to be a guest on a podcast, full stop, the end. There's absolutely no way I would have believed that what I have to say has any value, or that I'm, articulate enough, interesting enough, to have this kind of a conversation. Because, when 3 years ago, I was in a real place where I felt quite lost, and I didn't really, it's this thing where we've followed this is in quotation marks, like the right path of, getting the job, getting married, having kids, all of this, and following the rules of what I thought I should be doing. And then kind of getting to that point of being married and having kids and having the house and the job and blah, blah, blah. And actually still feeling quite empty. And even though on paper, I was okay, but I was quite unhappy. Like the soul of me, I think, was quite unhappy, and I was feeling quite confused, and I didn't actually know who the real version of me was, because I'd been, God, for years and years, people pleasing and putting on multiple masks of and behaving in a way that I thought I should to others. And so I would also say that I was, when I became a mother back in 2018, it's been one of the biggest gifts of my life, but it also provided me with this kind of way to hide myself further, in a way, because I put on a mask of mum,
the good mom,
and I kind of, in that murkiness, I kind of got lost in motherhood, because all of a sudden I had these little people to direct all of my attention into, and I got quite caught up in following the routines and being a perfect mum and doing all of this stuff to kind of actually distract myself from this empty feeling, this feeling of like, oh, I don't actually know who I am, and I don't think I'm quite happy in this situation or in this.
And I think this is really common. Like so many moms, I know I got lost in early motherhood. It was the only thing that I didn't like. That's all I was. I went to prenates. I went to breastfeeding support groups. I, fed the kids. That's it. That was my life. And I thought that was correct. I thought that was what I was supposed to do. I thought this was supposed to light me up. And like on the surface, agreed. It was fine enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I think that a lot of people would relate to that feeling. Right. Yeah. We're supposed to grow up and get married and have the kids and equals happiness. Right. That's the American dream or something. Or, I know you're not in America, but same kind of idea.
And also that I guess I thought that now that we're just like having this conversation, it's also I think I thought being a mother would kind of complete me. I would just feel completely fulfilled being a mother. And I didn't feel that way. And, the reality of having younger kids, especially, is sometimes it's really fucking boring and monotonous, and you're doing the same.
There's so much blacks you can play, and
yeah, but within those kind of years, and I think sometimes I think, oh God, will like my kids listen to this one day and think, God, but there's so many moments of joy, but there are also so many real kind of like low points, and you're so sleep deprived, and all of that.
It's so isolating too. We don't
isolating.
We don't have the community. We don't have the the people next to us to go vent our frustrations about the temper tantrum our 2-year-old just threw. Like those are just real pieces, but it really does make us feel more isolated, and then we sit in the judgment of even having these feelings, and like there's this whole cycle that
how dare I like have the feeling of like, oh God, oh God, this is really hard, and I'm not actually really enjoying this at the moment.
So much mom guilt, so much
mom guilt. And I think within that kind of spiral of shame, really, within the first 3 months of my second daughter being born, I came across this astrologer who was giving birth chart readings, and at the time I had more of my mother-in-law at the time in my mind of like, oh, she will love this because she's very she's Pisces sun like you. She's into like those witchy things. I thought perfect gift for her. And as soon as I bought it, I thought, I want this. I actually don't really understand what this is, but I know I need it. And then a couple of months later, this wonderful astrologer read my birth chart, and whilst I was at this point I was like 6 months postpartum, my second daughter, and within that hour, it was like the lights came back on inside of me. And not to say that all the things that she said in that hour kind of landed with me in the moment. So much of what she said went over my head because that version of Jenna couldn't see like past the four walls, couldn't see bigger for herself than the room she was currently in. So I couldn't receive everything she was saying to me. But it was like the words she said, they wouldn't leave me. And I listened to that recording quite a few times over the following months, because I was just like, this is, even though I can't receive this, there is something inside of me that is telling me that this is true. And I feel that there is more to me than I am currently allowing myself at the moment. And and then from that moment, it was a real catalyst of like my whole life doing a complete 180, basically. So within that, within about a year of that birth chart, I had left my 9 to 5 job of being a PA, so it's a personal assistant in the radio industry. About 6 months after that, myself and my husband had decided to consciously separate. And then about a year later, I moved out of our family home, and I was I was fully in my spiritual awakening at that point. I didn't really realize that's what was happening, but I was fully waking up. I was coming online and remembering things, but it was in a very, like, I guess all the things around me was quite, there were like these big shifts. But in terms of like my kind of spiritual gifts and beliefs and values and everything, that was a kind of slow, like, drip in a way of like the things that were kind of coming online for me. But yeah, a year later, I'd like manifested the flat that I'm living in now. It's the third year that I'm living here, and this flat just could not be more for me. You know, like,
well, and I think it's really important to recognize that the awakening journey is not a linear process. There's not a 1, 2, 3, okay, we're done, right? There's these external explosions. There's the relationships that end. There's some people need to move locations, jobs. Like every dimension of your life gets impacted in some fashion. And the internal process doesn't always match one for one either of what is happening at the same time. So we go through these waves of grief and feeling like, why is this happening to me? To then these rushes of excitement because we see the potential, and it's this crazy roller coaster.
Yeah. Of just like, it's this roller coaster of like which feels like these. Me and my best friend talk about this all the time. But it's like quantum leap.
Yes,
it's like that. We're like, oh my god, yeah.
We blink and everything is different, and we're not the same person. And we look back and go, what the heck just happened? Everything has changed, and yet we lived through those changes at the same time, and it didn't quite make sense, but that's the point, right? We're coming into a different version of ourselves. And, you know, for me in my journey also, it was a different catalytic event, but it also sent me on a spiritual journey and sent me deep in all kinds of rabbit holes to understand. And then I would come out and have a newfound understanding and a new set of triggers and layers, and relationships continue to change in my life because of it.
Yeah. But I think one of the biggest bits of information that she kind of gave me in that initial birth chart reading, just to, I guess, really like simplify, because your birth chart is this astrological blueprint of your uniqueness. Like, it's so important to kind of hit home the point that no one will ever have a birth chart like you. It's a blueprint of your soul. It's a blueprint of your unique magic, that nobody else will have. And when you start to look at it in that way, you realize this has the answers of like how you actually break free out of all of those masks, and gives you the kind of direction into like what is like your authentic self. And like, even in that first birth chart reading, like, at that point, my like astrology knowledge was just that I was a Leo sun, which is your star sign. That's all I knew going into that. And she absolutely blew my mind by telling me that I had a moon sign. And I was like, what? And then she was explaining to me what a Scorpio moon was. And I was like, holy shit, this woman is just like, how... I don't understand how she's literally speaking about like my inner world. Like, how
and you're not showing anybody
that I'm not showing anyone. Like, I don't understand like how she knows this. And but like, and again in that moment I was like, so much like, so my Scorpio moon needs kind of deep intimacy. It needs to have the deep conversations like we're having about deep things. I don't want to have small talk with people. I'm not interested.
Me neither.
And
not a Scorpio moon, but still.
And it's just, I'm really here for that. But also like I crave that intimacy with people. And she kind of framed it in terms of like what your moon sign is, it's also can be viewed as this inner child. It made me realize that growing up, I didn't have that outlet for the depth of emotion that I feel. Like I didn't have it anywhere to put it. And also Scorpio is very intuitive. Like it's a bit of a detective. It can sense things without that some people wouldn't necessarily parents have just had an argument, but on the surface everything's fine. I can feel that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's very
and it has now turned into kind of your thing. You've named your business Scorpio Merchant because it's how you're working with people. So you've turned this inner world that you were hiding and not being nurtured through your childhood and your relationships into your purpose.
Yes, 100%. And it's and that's even that knowing your moon sign is just it's just one part to this whole map of you. Like there are so many planets and asteroids and goddesses and all of these different things where there are layers upon layers upon layers of things that can be discovered in your birth chart. And I was just writing a workshop about this because we've just moved in to like one of the biggest years of astrology. Like
I know, I'm so excited.
It's so wild.
It's going to be chaotic, but I have excitement.
Yes.
I've been knowing it's coming. So it's like I have preparedness.
Yeah. And I think I think it's such a gift, isn't it? I think to understand or have an awareness of what's coming so that you can kind of like brace yourself a little bit for it and get ready to ride the wave of that, because there are such big shifts coming. And I think knowing your personal astrology, like knowing your birth chart, is going to be a kind of real anchor point to help us navigate through the year, because that's really, and I think that's what I felt, I've had coaches and mentors and been part of masterminds and all of those things, which I love being a part of, and I'm really grateful and thankful, and I will continue to invest in myself in those ways. But I have also I've been using my birth chart alongside all of this and been able to kind of use my own interpretation of my own chart to help me navigate all of those changes. And 2025 is like, change is inevitable. Like I said in this workshop, it's like we need to accept that we won't be the same person at the end of this year. We just won't. And actually, if we can lean into that change, which is exactly, you're like, I'm really loved.
2024 cleared out so many things. So I have that space, but I've had those awarenesses, right? So people who've been resisting change or holding on to that, it feels more shocking for everything to change.
Yeah. And I guess as well, it's like having this awareness. If you can, so if you're like, oh my God, what are they talking about? And what is my kind of, how is this going to affect me? I would say start with getting to grips with what your big three are, which is your sun, moon, and rising, and just leaning into like what the element is, because I feel like the shifts that are happening in 2025, it's very, so the last, the energy's kind of been earth and water, and now we're moving into fire and air. So it was a bit like slower moving, and we're in our feelings.
Well, and we've got the fires in California starting off the year, fire and air.
Yeah. And so it's quicker, and I think we have to, it's leaning into finding that, like, change is coming 100%, but it's leaning into the practices that are going to help ground us as we navigate like through that change. And like knowing your being able to look at your birth chart and work out, right, what feels good what do I uniquely need? Like, what does my moon need? And also, if you have a lot of earth in your chart, like the fire and air energy and the change and do this now and be more direct is going to be really challenging. Like what you were saying about clinging on and not wanting to change, not wanting to let go of things that don't feel aligned and right for me. Like that's going to be, it's just acknowledging that will be hard to navigate. But I am really like tingly excited about it.
Yeah, I am too. And, for all the listeners, our kind of preparation for this conversation is she has all of my birth chart info and my children's birth chart info. And so, in kind of a real time, what would this look like? We get to show you, which I don't think I've had live readings on this show before. So I'm really excited to see how this works.
Well, I tell you what, I just because this is the thing, it's like, birth charts are so layered, and also how I realized that my gifts work when I look at birth charts is I have to have the birth chart in front of me and speak to the person, and I need time to, like, throughout the conversation, I've realized that things ping out to me as we're having the conversation. But I thought, for the purposes of today, I'll just focus on the kind of big three, and I'll try my best to kind of pull it all together. But the first thing that I loved while looking at your birth chart was actually that I think I always find it, I haven't been on many podcasts, but it's really interesting to me because the podcast titles for people, or that people choose, there's always something within their birth chart that I'm like, well, that makes complete sense.
And I've been working with astrology this whole time in various pieces. So it was an awareness, but I know I have parenting and motherhood and all of that in my chart.
Like you have Neptune, which is that, the planet of spirituality and like going into the subconscious, and all of that in your fourth house, like, which is all around home and motherhood. And I was like, it is absolutely, that is Awakened Motherhood. Like, that is the title. And obviously you have your Pisces sun. So it's like, before we were like recording, I was like, are they tuning forks behind you? I was like, out, because I've literally just discovered tuning forks and I'm starting to work with them. But like that, your sun sign energy it's such an important energy to embody, which sounds really obvious, but I'm a Leo sun, and we were talking earlier about like the 3 years ago where I was just like very lost, and I was like, I don't even know who I am. I completely rejected my Leo sun. I was like, that's not me. I don't like being seen. I don't want to be center of attention. I don't want the spotlight on me. Yeah, I fucking do. Yeah, I
don't want to be interviewed. I absolutely want to do this. Oh my gosh.
That's actually what I want. But I'd so squashed that down inside of me that I'm in that reading. I was like, no, that's not me, because actually my rising sign, which is how you present to kind of the outside world, is Cancer, which is like the mother. Let me see how everybody else
Let me take care of everybody else.
Don't worry about me. I'll just hang back. And that is a big part of me. I love to nurture people and take care of people. But that Leo sun is like, and what about me? Adore me. Kind of adore me. Kind of, I want attention.
Well, and I think there's something to be said that even though it's not conscious, even when we're unconsciously masking who we are for all of the reasons, we're even less willing to be visible in that unconscious masking because we know that's not who we are. And so that person doesn't want to be seen. But by unmasking that person, we start to kind of turn these other pieces on, and we have a lot more, oh, wait a minute. I actually want to scream this from the rooftops now because it matters.
And, the level as well, like, of happiness, of joy that I get, that I'm acknowledging and really witnessing, like, and embodying what my Leo sun is. So like you being able to just like, this is the next thing that I'm into, that these are my spiritual practices. These are my like spiritual beliefs. Like, let's do some tarot. Like, it's like, that is what lights you up.
Right. Like, and I can't stop moving. I have to do all of the various things because I also like the puzzle of understanding all of these pieces and being able to put it together. And so it's like I don't sit still.
But what you just said there about wanting to put all the pieces together. It's like you see you're seeing the detail and like kind of how it all fits together. And your sun is in the 6th house, which is like the Virgo energy of like the detail, how, do you know what I mean? Like actually seeing how this all fits together. Whereas I'm a bit more like, I want to do that, but I'm not really like, not fussed, but like, I'm not thinking about how it all fits together. Do you know what I mean? Whereas there's something within you that's like, no, I do actually want to drill down into the detail of this and see.
I do. And then I want to zoom back out, and then I want to understand how the nuances of it. So I actually approach it multidimensionally because I need both of those perspectives to understand people and relationships and the spiritual components and, the relationships with my kids, the relationship with previous partners, like all of that is data for me to then like intersect and understand.
And is that, and that to me feels like it's because there's part of you that's like, there's a part of you it's a devotion to be of service, to kind of, to push 100%. All the things that you're learning. It's like that. When you are in service, when you're helping others, it's like, like that again.
Yes. Every lesson that I have been through, especially the most challenging ones, I see today as gifts for the collective because I'm able to channel the lesson of the experience through my own stories and share them to help others.
I love it. I love it. The other thing I wanted to say is that, you also have, you also have a Taurus moon. And I wondered, this was interesting to me because I couldn't quite like, and I was like, let's just have a chat about it because sometimes I'm like, your Taurus moon is in the 8th house, and the 8th house is kind of linked to Scorpio energy. So they are like, like the yin and yang, they're like at the opposite spectrums of each other. So it's like Taurus moon is like, I want, there's kind of like a slow pace to things. It's like, it really wants like the safety, like the grounded energy. But then that is in like the 8th house is kind of quite a mysterious house, isn't it? It's like going into the shadows, like the kind of subconscious of things. And I was like, how?
I can tell you how these connect because they make perfect sense to me. So I have a deep need for safety and grounding. That rises a certain kind of energy in me when I feel unsafe. That, my book is about creating safety and security for my kids in a horrific situation, right? And so when I am in that heightened nervous system state, it actually utilizing those emotions, I can hold safety in a different way. And, having consistency in routines and a house that we are in, I know I'm not going to be a nomad, for instance. I'm not going to ever feel like that. But at the same time, all of that is married with a need to move quickly, a need for change in every other dimension of my life. So like home and family needs that grounded safety. Income needs that grounded safety. All of the like nervous system pieces have to come first. I can't go do things without them. But then as soon as I'm grounded there, my mind and every other dimension of me is putting all kinds of issues together. And so it's almost like managing the two because I can't go take actions that trigger me into unsafety or everything like, it all falls apart. But at the same time, I'm able to hold both at the same time in which my body stays grounded and safe here while everything else is creating. And then at some point, it all kind of shifts. And so I actually do both, even though they seem connected.
I see. I love that so much because I was like, I kind of understand that, but at the same time, it's just like for me, like I couldn't get there.
Yeah.
But then and I would, and also I would never have admitted that before. Like I would never have wanted to admit, like in a birth chart reading, that I didn't quite understand that.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, this is being recorded and going out. But it's because the more and more I read people's birth charts, it's like like your interpretation of your birth chart is the most important one, because you, the soul of Amanda, put it together. So, you know, and this is the thing, and the more time you spend looking at your birth chart and thinking, what does my Taurus moon mean to me? What does the 8th house mean to me? Let me put that together, because I put it together, you know?
Right.
And
the truth is, my 2 oldest sons are Taurus sons, and so they need a different level of grounding. And so that becomes my first priority, is grounding in the physical for them and for me, right? So there's this entanglement that happens because I recognize that all of us need this in order to feel safe in our bodies. And, you know, I've had many conversations in various stages of my business about safety in general. Like, I have so many conversations with people about not just safety on the physical level, but we'd have emotional safety and mental safety and spiritual safety in the way that we feel within these components. And so the same kind of Taurus energy pulls through there, because when people feel into me, I'm somebody that has found safety in the deepest, darkest places of my story as well. Right?
Yes.
That is
Taurus moon in 8th house.
Exactly. Yeah. And so in the taboo and hidden and spiritual places, I've been able to bring that into that grounded, safe place, and people can share with me their deepest, horrific, shameful experiences and not feel judged, not feel, you know, more wounded. If anything, it can be a healing process, because I can hold that because I've lived it and I continue to live it.
That makes me feel like so emotional, but like, because I just think it's so fucking beautiful when like you can you understand, like, that's such a gift to understand like that part of your birth chart, and know like your heart, you don't mean to, and to be able to harness that, and then to be able to then help others. Like, they're just like, sometimes they just aren't words.
I understand, you know, and I've had this conversation with people before that, you know, most even therapists that people go to for their mental health challenges, or they get triggered by people's deepest, most challenging, shameful experiences. And when the therapist gets triggered, the person who's supposed to help you is in an emotionally unsafe position, receiving that information, trying to help you work through it. That actually re-traumatizes you, because even if they don't say anything, we're all very sensitive, whether we like it or not, and we can feel that. And so when we feel that somebody is triggered by experience, we feel the judgment that they're projecting, which is, yes, internal, but in the moment, we don't recognize that's about them because we're still processing our stuff. And so when people seek out support and end up being re-traumatized, you know, that only continues this cycle. And so I have not really met very many people, and there's probably not as many people who have this particular moon placement, but I don't know many people who can truly hold space in safety and all levels for these horrific experiences.
How have you navigated your Chiron placement? Like, how does that, because I ask as well, because so I have the same, not exactly the same, but I have Chiron in Gemini.
Right.
And so for people that don't know, Chiron is this, you know, I talk about it every single birth chart reading, because it is this, so it's your soul's wounding. It's like this painful.
It's the wounded healer, right?
But again, like in the birth chart reading, when she was explaining it to me, I was like, fuck, that is me. But then, it's like having the awareness that is there was so helpful to me, because then I could start to see it as it, like, when it was starting to show up. I'm like, holy shit, like, I really don't believe what I have to say is important in any scenario. Like, I have, like, you know, 3 years ago, like, just being able to, like, I would be sat in a meeting and just being like, dear God, I hope no one asks my opinion. I hope no one talks to me. Like, I just don't want to be heard. And it really held me back. And so when I kind of And when I was just talking earlier about saying, oh, I wouldn't admit that I wasn't quite sure of what a Taurus moon, it's because I'm constantly, this storyline in my head of like, you're going to get found out at some point. Like you're not, what you've got to say doesn't make sense. Or, you know what I mean? And I just wondered, so yours is in the 9th house, which is more about it's imparting your wisdom on others, like your kind of life lessons and things like that. And I'm like, because obviously, clearly you have lots to impart on others. And I wonder if that impacts, like, if that's still like sometimes a storyline you're playing in your head of like, does anyone care what I have to say? Or is this making sense? I find myself saying all the time, does that make sense? Like to people like having to, and I just wondered if that.
Yeah. So for me, it has manifested differently than the imposter. There is some imposter that comes forward at times. I think we all experience that. I don't have all of the certifications. I don't have a degree. I don't, like we can build that story. But generally speaking, that doesn't have a lot of weight for me. The way that I look at Gemini, because Gemini's the twins as well, right? So there's like these two sides that we bounce back and forth. And it's an air sign, right? So it's all about speaking those pieces. I have a lot of conversations, and I've run courses before about this concept of duality, which in a lot of ways the twins are holding, right? And so the ways that we push and pull against ourselves, right? And so when we're sitting there saying, I don't actually know enough, and because we are struggling against actually stepping into the power because of all of the wounded reasons, right? So it's almost highlighting those dualities of what wounding in humanity looks like, right? Because so much of the reasons that we don't step forward, the reasons that we sit in this is because the ways we were shamed as a child, or the ways that we've carried the ancestral karma, or whatever the pieces are. There's this push-pull of knowing who we are versus it's not safe, again, back to safety, to actually step forward. And so for me, what I've done is actually almost systemize, again, puzzle brain here, systemize the way that I approach these woundings. And when I recognize that I am avoiding something or I'm resisting something, I can feel the tension in my body that's actually almost a gravitational field within myself, pulling me apart and separating myself instead of containing the lesson. And so I take a look at every single experience and the duality that it has unfolded, and I approach this in a different way. And so I, for instance, looking at, the story, my big story, my ex-husband was arrested for human trafficking and my kids and all of these pieces, like that was a hugely shameful experience. And I was deeply attached to the trauma bond and the darkness that all of these things were playing out. But at the end of the day, that pull into one direction catalyzed me all the way in the other direction into this awakened, powerful fight for my kids' place, right? So that's a massive duality that I'm holding. And I can't actually define it as one or the other. I have to actually define it as the entire experience of this gift and lesson and story that I get to share with other people as somebody who can experience the full spectrum, right? And so that's how I bring forward the wisdom piece of the, Gemini wounded healer in a sense, to be able to actually speak it out and create it into more of this is how we kind of approach all of the duality within ourselves, because we do this constantly in the way that we speak. And so it's almost like I'm sitting here kind of translating these wounding lessons as they come through and helping people see how they've been in division with themselves for all of humanity's primary woundings, which is a whole different conversation in itself.
My goodness. I also love that you've got Saturn and Uranus in the 3rd house, in terms of, so for me, just like looking at, I was like, that feels like, and in Sagittarius as well. So I was like, for me, that is like the life lessons, like the kind of karmic life lessons. It's like they've come along to help you actually. It's like you're communicating to others how you broke free, if you know what I mean, and speaking the truth of that breaking free. And I was like, it's so, you can't make this up. And you're just like, well, yeah, that.
And everybody, like, we did not practice. There is no like, oh, I told, but no, you can't make this up. I mean, speaking truth is like, that's my purpose, is to live these lessons and create the truth of the experience for others to receive and to help, understand the dynamics of our relationship, especially our motherhood relationship, because every mother is a child, is a daughter. Also, every mother has had the partner relationships and also has the child relationships. And so it's this deeply feminine, creative relationship that we have with both ourselves and the external world.
Yeah. And I really have, discovering my own birth chart has, but it's like a monumental like gift. But then being able to start to get an awareness and understanding of my children's big three, just as a start, a jumping off point, has been so helpful. And this is all with the kind of caveat of like, I'm looking at their birth charts, but they're not mine. And they have their own kind of soul journey to go on and things to uncover. But I think as their mother, like, or as a parent or a caregiver looking at this, it provides such like golden nuggets of information to just help you nurture their authenticity, because there are so many, and we can't control this really. It's so out of our control, but like they will ultimately face these challenges which will want to keep them small, which will want them to follow the, in quotation marks, right path, which will want them to mask parts of themselves. That is just what happens. And I think we all have to kind of navigate our way through that and then kind of come out the other side and start peeling back the layers and, but I think there's ways that by knowing your children's birth charts, there's ways you can champion certain parts in your kids and really help them see that they are these unique beings. And actually, because, my eldest daughter is Aquarius sun and moon. And she she's Aquarius sun and moon, and she's Scorpio rising. So she is she's going to change some things up. Jesus Christ. Like, it's just a lot, actually. It's just a lot. And, and I'm saying this because I feel like it's so fucking important for parents to know, but I am also finding it deeply challenging at the same time. Because
and I love how outspoken my children are. And oh my God, parenting that.
Yes. Oh yeah, it's wild because I'm like, so she's double Aquarius. So she's rebellious and she thinks outside the box, and I love it. She's wild, but I'm like, if you don't put your fucking shoes on, I'm going to lose it. Like, can you just do as you're told? And it's like, no. Like that.
It's not my idea. You didn't, there's no reason. So.
But then what helps me is I know that's such a big part of her. And that's who she is. And it makes my life really hard sometimes. And sometimes I don't navigate it how I want to. But I always come back to that is authentically who she is.
Yeah. Well, and from my perspective, as fucking hard as this is, the reality is the kids who aren't masking, because we don't come into the world masking. And so, especially in childhood, when we're pushing all of the buttons, and I was this child too. And I pushing all of the buttons and challenging all of the status quo, especially when we recognize that this is the way this child is supposed to operate. Of course they are. What they're actually doing is mirroring all the places that we are still masking and we are still following the status quo, and that we have been holding on to wounding because of our childhood and the ways that we were shamed for being different too. Yeah. And so it's actually a gift if we can receive it in maybe not the moment, but once we process and reflect and we can look back and say, well, why does this actually bother me? do they really need to wear shoes right now? Do they really need to operate this way? Is this just because this is the way I am told, expectations of how we move through the world?
Do you know what, though? Exactly what you're saying, because, and I've heard this saying like before, that children are your teachers.
Yes, they're our biggest mirrors. They're our biggest teachers. And every time we find ourselves triggered by our child's behavior, it is like 99.9% of the time a reflection of something we're still holding in judgment of ourselves because of the ways that we were shut down as children. And so whether it's, do you really need to wear shoes? What's the problem? Bring the shoes. If their feet get cold, we'll have them, whatever. Like, is this really something to fight about?
And I also, it's really interesting that if you're just, if that's really, if what we're talking about is really speaking to you as well, it's so interesting to look at your chart and see what kind of like where your planets are and things like that. And then look at your kids' chart and see where their planets are. And there's normally, I've seen this, that like the things that you're not necessarily lacking, but you don't have a lot of that energy of, your kid will have a lot of that energy of, or kind of like vice versa. Like I've also realized that like my eldest, her North Node is in Leo, which is where my son is. And it's like, I also can impart my kind of, hopefully at some point, some of my Leo energy to help her, guide her, hopefully on that North Node potentially. But she, with all that Aquarius energy, the planet I have in my chart is Jupiter. So
which is a big planet.
How I expand is really starting to embody that Aquarius energy. And that didn't come online for me until she was born. And you can look, this is like how it gets really interesting. And I get so excited because you can look at your birth chart and then you can go back to the date your child was born and see what was going on with the planets that time. And April, as my eldest, she activated certain planets in my chart and things came online. And it really kind of solidifies for me, or I don't know it to be true, but I feel it to be true, that there is just, again, it's like, feels like confirmation for me that our children come in to activate these things within us that need to be awakened so that we can like grow and travel further down our soul's path is what it feels to me.
100%. I mean, I didn't plan to have my kids. I mean, obviously knew how it worked, but I didn't plan to have them. And at the same time, having them forced me to stand up and fight, to step into my power, activated me in so many ways. And in doing so, learned how much I actually mattered and how much I wasn't just fighting for them. I was fighting for me. But without them, I wouldn't have had anything to fight for. And so that activation and then entanglement where we recognize, especially as a mom and our kids literally portal through us, the connection that we have to our children is unlike any other connection they will ever have. And the activation that can happen during that process awakens both mom and then, the child into the world and continues. I've had the most amazing realizations with my own children in which they're still so energetically connected to me and reactive and responsive to me. The ways that I even take care of my own body, they energetically react to because of that entanglement. And what serves me actually serves them. And it's really unclear who I'm doing it for, but it doesn't matter because we're still kind of this symbiotic, set of energies moving through the world.
Oh, I love that. So I did look at your kids Big 3, but then what I did actually do was I looked at your chart and then I just went back to each day, like
the birthdays.
Yeah. Just to be like, let me just see what the planets were doing, right? And so there was one thing that kind of stood out to me in each chart. So the day that your eldest was born, Pluto was activating Neptune. So in your chart. So that was like, so Pluto, planet of transformation, was literally activating your IC line, which is like your inner foundations, Like in your Neptune is in your 4th house, which is like home, motherhood. Like it's
literally activated motherhood.
Done. One.
Well, I'm and truly having him, I was even while pregnant, I'm going to be independent. I'm going to keep working. I'm going to, do all of this. And then I had the baby and they handed me and I said, wait, you want me to give this to daycare? No, I'm not doing that. I would have panic attacks about leaving my child because I was so deeply connected to this new motherhood experience that I didn't understand. I would have total freakouts about anybody else feeding none of my children ever took a bottle because I never left. We were not two people. I don't care what you say. I am mother. Like that is absolutely what happened.
Wow. And then the day your middle child was born, Jupiter was activating your moon.
Okay.
Sign. So that I felt like more of like a expansion, like even further of like what's internally what's going on, and all of that Taurus Scorpio, the chat that we had.
Yep.
And then also on that day your middle child was born, Neptune was activating your natal Mercury. So it feels like that was activating your spiritual, an element of spiritual communication. And then the day your youngest was born, Uranus was activating your North Node. So, and your North Node is in Aries, in your 7th house.
Warrior.
Yeah. In Aries, warrior, leadership, taking action in your 7th house of relationships. Yep. So it's like, and Uranus is like, I'm breaking free. I'm awakening. Like, and I was like, well.
Yeah. And it didn't happen immediately after he was born, but my youngest was 15 months old when his father was arrested. And so like, it's almost like that activation was coming forward to prepare me for what was coming.
Yeah. That's wild, right?
No. Absolutely. And my little one is my little fire baby too. Like he just gung ho, let's go do things. And so he reflects that also at me a lot of times. And like from an energy standpoint, he loves to play protector. He loves to talk about being, a warrior man, and because that's
I didn't notice this in the others, but it definitely stood out to me with the youngest is that they have a stellium, like they have lots of activity going on in Pisces, right, in the 12th house, and I just found that like really interesting, in just in terms of your Pisces sun, and just I don't even know what I want to say about it, but it was just like, it's like stands out to you and you're like, if I had time, I would really delve into this like that. I was like, what?
That's interesting to me.
But like even, it's just, I just can't stress enough how like, I feel like you're, getting to grips with your birth chart is this spiritual tool that I think is going to become just so needed, now as we move through this whole shift of this year, but onwards, like this whole, Pluto moving into Aquarius, like last November. It's just like, we got to get on the train of knowing your astrology and just realizing that your birth chart is this map of you, and it's just something that we need to keep with us and keep leaning into, because it just helps with our soul evolution, with our soul growth here. And it's just, and you're the only one that can really truly interpret it, as you so beautifully kind of like did the example with your Taurus moon and Scorpio. That makes total sense to you.
Yeah, exactly. It makes total sense to me. The thing I kind of want to say about that too is, I'm not somebody, astrology hasn't been a rabbit hole that I've felt the need to study. And yet I've been around it enough that I've picked up enough pieces and I understand, and I've unmasked myself enough that I've learned how I respond to pieces and things. And I follow astrologists from a collective interpretation because knowing that and being able to react to it. And there are times where I still get called to go get more bigger readings or something like that because I sense there's some piece I need or whatnot. But even having one reading and getting some pieces and starting to unmask gives us such an important tool so that we're not in constant fight or flight and reactive. Because if we're playing in this masking energy and we're not who ourselves, we're exhausted on a nervous system level as well. And so even having the space to respond to the chaos in the world isn't there.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, I think as well. So there's and that we needed like a mic drop moment there. When I don't know what else to add to this.
Yeah. So I think that it's amazing, and I think the more tools that we employ, the more pieces we understand of who we are, what we're doing, what these big events have meant, how we might want to translate them, because we still have some choices of how we react and respond, right? There isn't okay, because I, am clearly somebody who needs to speak out wisdom, I must do this. But of course I'm called to have a podcast. Of course I'm called to speak through stages. Of course I'm called to speak about relationships and lessons, because it's been my life, and it is validated as not a wrongness, right? I think some of the big pieces for me, I used to be in great judgment of the choices that I made when I didn't know what I didn't know. And I would sit there and reflect back and go, I should have known better. Like everybody else I can have compassion for. I should have known better. I should have seen this coming. I had such high expectations of myself based on my own childhood wounding and pieces and all of that. But still, the judgment I held for me for making the choices that I did really kept me not from necessarily speaking about it, but from really releasing the shame pieces. And so by able to, when you look back and you go, it was literally written in my chart, this is, I've chose to step into these experiences. And man, consciously, I never could have put this together, but unconsciously choosing this, what a gift I've actually given myself by going through that and now being able to use it. All of a sudden, that judgment over myself and the I should have knowns and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, I did know. I actually did know and chose to do this so that I could help drive this evolution forward. And so I don't have to sit in the what the heck is wrong with me or whatever other negative self-talk that I could have about it. I can embrace it for what it was intended for.
Yeah, I love that. It's all, I think, the more I realized that all exactly what you said, it's the adversity that I faced. It's all lessons and it's all a gift.
Yes.
And it's all happening for me, not to me.
Yes.
Yes,
exactly.
That's exactly what it is.
It is. It's happening for us, for the collective, for everybody, because the more people who wake up, the more moms who wake up, the more kids who are raised consciously, the more the world really will change. And that's a big part of what I'm doing. And I'm finding the more people I connect with on this level, the connections that I'm creating now from a unmasked and an awakened state, just like you can't make this stuff up. People I wouldn't have any idea that have connections to challenges I faced or whatnot. All of a sudden they're in my world and we're talking and they're like, well, I don't normally tell people this, but and there's a lot of that happens, which is a really cool experience to have, to recognize the way our magnetism shifts and changes as we come through this experience, and the way our own gifts turn on, and the way that our connections to higher realms and different experiences and our own channel activates as we go through this journey. And the motherhood journey is such a huge part of that activation, because we're literally the birth portal. And as our child comes through, we are connected to both the physical and non-physical places. And we will always have that connection to that point in time through that birth in a way that, masculine bodies don't have. And I think recognizing that and honoring that and then utilizing that is, such the biggest gift, that not only to ourselves and our kids, but to the world.
I don't even know what to add to that.
I can go on and on and on, as clearly shows in my chart.
I just love it. I just absolutely love it.
Yeah, I do too. And this is, you're somebody we could just go on for forever about these topics, and I'm sure there's even more points of connection. But I know you also have, a launch coming on, some workshops you're wanting to do. I would love for you to share with the audience about just how they can actually get this for themselves too.
Yes. So first thing is, come follow me on Instagram at Scorpio Moon Coach. But really excitingly, I 2025 is this, we've spoken about it lots. There is huge shifts in it, like this year. And I've decided that I'm going to do a course where I am basically imparting all of my astrology and birth chart knowledge within a course, because I'm realizing exactly what we've been talking about really throughout this whole a lot of this conversation is the importance of you interpreting your own birth chart. I love reading people's birth charts, and it's not something I will stop doing, but I think I'm realizing collectively, like, it's so important to just get this knowledge, wisdom out to people so that they can just start to interpret their own chart. And this course, basically, we're going to go into detail on all the zodiac signs, the planets, the houses, and then how to just put those things together. So at the end of the chart, you kind of have this information, this knowledge forever. So you can just continue to work, use this discovery tool, which is unique to you, forever, basically. And that is I feel so excited about it. It hadn't ever really crossed my mind to do a course about that, because I've just been so kind of on the path of reading other people's birth charts, and now I'm realizing more and more the importance of actually reading your own, and that one of the big astrology pieces and this year is Neptune moving into Aries, and I feel like it's a real you becoming your own mystic, you becoming sovereign in your own spirituality, you leaning into your intuitive interpretation of what spirituality means to you, and like taking ownership of that, and not seeking those interpretations from other people. It's like, no, I'm ready, I'm ready to set the inner authority, I guess, of owning that interpretation of your own chart that your soul put together. And it feels really important for me to just
and for me, my North Node is Aries, so I'm like, let's get going. Come on.
Yes. But yeah, and it's called You Are a Phenomenon, because that is because we are. It's a 1 in 70 trillion chance that we are here, which is wild. But we just don't. We don't. We're taught not to realize that about ourselves, and it's just, your birth chart is this example of that 1 in 70 trillion. No one else will ever have your exact birth chart, and there's so much magic within owning your uniqueness.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I will put all of the links to everything in the show notes.
Thanks.
So if people want, I'll put the links to your website and all of that in the show notes for the listeners as well. And when is this launching?
It starts the 23rd of January, but it's UK time, but I'm recording all of the modules. So if they're not in the UK, we can make it work.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, absolutely. This was a really fun conversation.
It was so fun.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for your time and energy and thoughts on my chart, as well as sharing your story.
Yeah, of course.
I know it's going to be really supportive, and I cannot wait to see, honestly, 2025 has got some stuff in store for us that we don't even know yet, and I'm here for it.
We're ready.
So,
We're ready.
We're ready. And I hope all of you listening are as well, because it's happening. So check her course, and I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you for joining us on Awakened Motherhood. I hope today's episode inspired you and offered support for your journey. Remember, your story has the power to ignite change, and your resilience is a testament to your strength as a mother. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Share it with other mothers who might benefit from our stories of empowerment and healing. I invite you to connect with me on social media platforms at Amanda Quick Healing, or visit my website, amandaquickhealing.com, for more information on other ways to work with me. Until next time, keep embracing your divine self and discovering your warrior mama within. Thank you for being part of Awakened Motherhood, where your story is the spark for change.